Hi and welcome to this week's landscape photography vlog. In this episode you're joining me on a multi-day adventure of a place called Mount Tyndall for some photography using a Sigma 100-400. I love using a super tele lens, especially from a point of elevation, and I hope this video will provide you with a useful insight into just how effective a long focal length can be when shooting landscapes.
Hi, we're on Tassie's west coast, up a mountain where I brought the tent up along with me and enough supplies for 2 nights. Tent set up right there, close to this precarious cliff. But yeah, I brought enough supplies for 2 nights, and the idea is to set up camp there, allowing me to explore this whole huge area that is just outstanding and pretty imposing, to be honest. And find compositions and get as many photos as, seems right. It's now approaching 6 o'clock. I got up about 2.5 hours ago up here with enough time to set up, take a nap, because lugging too much camera gear up a mountain is hard work. I just got up now, and now I want to go and see what's going on. I've got a couple of ideas for compositions. A lot of them are based around this hectic cliffside here. However, here's the however, I feel like all of the good weather is actually happening behind me. So west is over there, and that's where all this atmospheric haze is coming through, which obviously is what's going to be creating great light. So for now, what I'm going to be doing is walk along this ridge line to over that trig up there, which is the pinnacle of the mountain. Take a look around and see what I can find.
So I headed off looking for compositions. I think it's really important to familiarize yourself with the location before getting your first shot, especially if it's your first time in that place. The purpose of this is to get a feel for where you are, what stands out and draws your attention, what feelings does the environment evoke in you. It's useful to then listen to those feelings, as they'll inevitably translate into your photography of the day. So the sooner you're aware of them, the easier it's going to be composing a photograph that tells the intended story.
Alright, so for ages I've been trying to figure out whether I can shoot a sunset in that direction behind me. And while the view is spectacular, I mean, look at this, clearly it's completely outrageous. Check this out. The issue is just the atmosphere and all of the light are happening behind me, which, isn't really a problem. Obviously sunset's happening over that way, but what's been happening now for about, 15-20 minutes, there's constantly clouds pushing through behind me. Say that keeps happening all the way through sunset. I mean, I'm looking at a cloud inversion already that I didn't notice before. Interesting. So I think what I'll do is pop to one of those tall boulders up there and get an idea of what I'm dealing with here, because this is looking super interesting.
Once again, the golden rule in landscape photography kicked into effect, and that is that adaptation is key. Rather than being too set on shooting a specific direction or scene, which may appear like the obvious choice, it always comes down to working with the conditions rather than against them.
Yeah, this was the right choice. Check it out, a huge cloud inversion behind me. What I'm doing at the moment, the game plan is I had to slow down and give it a moment to properly think. And the game plan is to take my old A7 III and shoot a time lapse in the direction here. There's nothing there at the moment because the clouds are pushing through so significantly, but that's exactly what I want to be capturing. I want to get that motion as the whole scene reveals and hides again. While that's rolling, I'm going to be going up to the 100-400 that's waiting there on my large tripod, because it'll need to be fairly sturdy. And then I'm going to be picking out scenes all around. So as outstanding as these conditions are, I'm having a hard time getting nice shots in. Mostly because the scene where the clouds cross over with the landscape at this point in time, where the light's starting to get real nice now, is quite far away, and there aren't that many compositions I can get out of that. So what I'm trying to do is create depth by getting a foreground layer, a midground layer, and a far distant layer. It's a nice enough shot, and I think I'm going to like it because the light on the foreground is very nice. But I'm not really feeling it completely because, you know, the hectic stuff is happening right there, and all we get over there is just a sea of clouds with no context, which is beautiful, but you're looking for something in it when you just get a sea of clouds with nothing to relate them to. Yeah, strange one. Crazy good conditions and a hard time getting photos.
I got a few more shots but realised the light was only going to get better from here on out, so rather than stressing too much to get something, I decided to take it easy, get a few aerials and wait for the light to kick off. And then it did kick off, revealing beautiful scenes with golden clouds pouring through distant ranges.
Yeah, I've been shooting in this direction a little while ago, simply because there's context there. You know, the clouds are pouring over mountains and through valleys, and there's some peaks in the distance. It's a nice scene. It's actually getting much better now. Yeah, what we're doing with this shot is we've got peaks far off in the distance, we've got high contrast down to the right here, and just very nice wavy lit up clouds in the foreground. So my hope is that the heavy weight over here somewhat balances out what's happening in the top left, and the scene around that is just quite beautiful. I'm not heaps convinced, but if it's anything, have a look here.
I was really quite happy with how some of those shots had come together. And rather than focusing on more stills, I decided to roll a few time lapses into sunset instead. Those clouds eventually moved into my campsite, and I spent the night sitting in a cloud which lasted all the way through golden hour the next morning with next to no visibility. But finally, once the sun was well above the horizon, the clouds burnt off, and although it was far from golden hour by then, the light was still magnificent, and I shot this. I did shoot only very little throughout that day. It turned into a pretty hot and unforgiving one, and there being very little shade on the mountain itself, I opted for a trip down to the tarns, have a swim, get drinking water, and focus on staying cool and hydrated. And then later, eventually in the early evening hours, the light turned and once again a cloud inversion pushed in from the shores of the Southern Ocean off to the west.
Here we are for round two. Yeah, last night didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. I think the problem was I was overwhelmed with the amount of things I was shooting. There was vlogging, there were 2 cameras, a time lapse, one of the cameras being the time lapse camera, drone footage, and so much going on in the environment that I think I was just overwhelmed with the amount of things I was trying to achieve. So tonight I'm taking a different approach. I've taken one camera and that's it. Really just hone in on the one activity that I want to be achieving, because it was a shame yesterday. I fell asleep quite frustrated because the conditions were outstanding. But yeah, let's see what tonight brings. So in terms of a composition, it's just varying all across this landscape because there's all of these layers and all of these individual hills, and as the sun's setting. But just as an example, what I'm currently looking at is this here. And usually what I tend to do when I'm composing shots like this is I just want to get as many versatility into the frame as possible. So if I can combine as many layers as possible, each receding layer is going to be a little less contrasty, and the more of those I get, the more depth I'm going to achieve with my picture. And in this instance here, I'd be looking at f11 1/160. Fine by me. Let's give that a go. Now there's a slight breeze going, slight wind really, and as the light's slowly fading, especially when I'm not shooting right into the sun and my shutter has to go quite slow, shake is very, very quickly introduced. So I was shooting a couple of images in a 90-degree angle to where the wind was blowing from, and it was really hard to get a sharp shot. So I've just I've turned my camera to silent shutter to take the shake from the actual shutter opening and closing out of the equation. I've got it on a self-timer, so I press my shutter, let go, camera settles down, 5 seconds later the image is taken. If I'm shooting, you know, not into the wind but along the wind, I was taking the lens hood off because that's another element that catches wind and shakes it about. And even if that wasn't working, you know, I got to ramp the ISO a little bit to allow for a faster shutter speed. even that was proving difficult. So lucky for me, the interesting parts are happening into the wind anyway. So that's a couple of tricks that I'd recommend you keep in mind when you're shooting a tele lens with some wind going around. Self timer, number 1. Silent shooting if possible, number 2. Lens hood off makes a big difference. And worst comes to worst, you up your ISO, and thereby you manage to increase your shutter speed. I mean, that depends, I've seen amazing photography that goes the other way around. Oh, this is heating up. So I'm really curious to see what the clouds are going to be doing to the sunset. Could go either way. There is, I'll just record it here. There's an amazing inversion out on the horizon, but there might be these banks on the horizon also that will sadly cover up the sun. It might actually be starting to happen. But if not, if the sun breaks through here, this could get really interesting. In the meantime, I've found a shot that I think I'm quite into, because it's a tele layers shot that includes a fair couple of elements. It's layers of mountains, but they're combined, they're playing together with more elements than just these ridge lines. So we've got a very high contrasty element to the bottom left. You've got the lake as another contrasty element. Not quite sure how they're standing to each other, the bottom left and the lake, but it's what we've got to work with at the moment. To the right bottom of the frame is a road that's snaking its way through the environment. Center and off to the right, we've got more layers sort of all guiding down to the center. And at the top is this ridiculous layer of clouds that's just sitting up there illuminated. Yeah, this is quite interesting. So let's see how this worked out.
And from here I got a few final shots. I captured a few dramatic long exposures during blue hour, which turned the clouds into waves crashing violently around seeming islands. Also captured what would turn out to be my favourite photograph of the weekend. I love the peacefulness of this scene and the glow and the exact moment golden hour turns blue. What do you think? Is there a shot you prefer? If so, let me know in the comments, and until then, thanks again for joining me on this little landscape photography adventure. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.